And with that, I turn to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There is lots to work on. Now, colleagues, it was just a matter of time before the Trump administration set the new high water mark for public corruption. That moment arrived a little more than 2 weeks ago with the settlement of Trump's ridiculous IRS lawsuit. This hearing is the first opportunity for Congress to examine it. So let's start by zooming out to get a full appreciation of how dirty this whole situation has been. Donald Trump sued his own administration for $10 billion over a tax return leak that happened on his watch. A judge appeared ready to toss the lawsuit, so Trump rushed a settlement for personal gain. The acting attorney general went out yesterday and said they're not moving forward with the $1.8 billion insurrection slush fund. The other part of this settlement apparently remains in place, and that is the part that presents the biggest direct benefit to Trump. Todd Blanche let Trump off the hook for potentially $100 million in back taxes by canceling what's reported to be a long-running dispute with the IRS. Then he let the entire Trump family and the Trump organization off the hook for any tax crimes they may have committed in the past. As of right now, everybody in America is subject to audit except the Trump family. Unfortunately, the Senate Republican leader was quoted this morning saying that this is business as usual, that it's a standard settlement. The reality is that's totally wrong. Two former IRS commissioners have now confirmed that this is completely without precedent. It's the ultimate case of an ultra-wealthy individual living under one set of rules while everybody else lives under another, a crooked double standard that benefits Trump and family. I take it as an admission of his own guilt when it comes to tax cheating. Trump and his family have been stuffing every dollar they can grab into their own pockets. If everything was on the level, it seems to me he wouldn't need Todd Blanche to get the IRS off his back. Secretary Bessent owes the committee an explanation of what the Treasury knows about the dirty settlement. That's because his department was involved from beginning to end. Treasury was a defendant and a negotiator in the lawsuit. It was informed by IRS attorneys that Trump had no real case. And it sure looks to me like Treasury's top lawyer quit his job in objection to the settlement. This is an abuse of the IRS that goes way beyond anything that I have any familiarity with. My view is this committee needs to investigate this on a bipartisan basis. Blanche allegedly dropped the insurrection fund, doesn't change that. So what's particularly shocking about a corrupt deal like this is it comes when so many American families are fearful about the economy. I was home last week having 4 town hall meetings in parts of my state that are bright red. And what they talked to me about was the pain of inflation going up, wage growth going down, the job market flattening. The Trump administration doesn't seem to care. Last week, Secretary Bessent was asked during an interview about price increases caused by the Iran war. He said, I quote, "It was less than $200 in extra gasoline costs. All the Democrats want to talk about is beef and gasoline." Now, to me, you might think that a political leader couldn't get any more dismissive of people's economic concerns. But then Donald Trump topped it himself. When asked if Americans' financial situations made him think about ending the war that he started, he said, and I quote, "Not even a little bit." He continued, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody." Mr. Chairman and colleagues, I've never heard a President of the United States talk in such a dismissive way about the hurt of the American people. And then he rambled through his ever-changing goals in the quagmire of a war. No sympathy for struggling families at all from the President. Americans are increasingly spending down their savings and going into debt to get by. The people running the country are ratcheting up the cost of living with wars, tariffs, and cuts to health care and basic services. It's cold comfort to somebody who had to max out their tax credit card to feed their kids that Trump might get his face on a $250 bill. But that's the kind of priority that apparently the Treasury Department is focusing on these days. Even outside of economic matters, the Treasury Secretary is simply out of step with the American people. There's no better example than the fact that there's been a cover-up of the massive file of Epstein's financial records for a year and a half. This is part of the effort I've made. It's the only one to follow the money in the Epstein situation, and yet there's been a denial of access to committee investigators and lying in public about their significance. That subject alone deserves its own hearing. Senate investigators are trying to figure out who paid Epstein for girls, and unfortunately, Secretary Bessent is involved in preventing that from happening. The bottom line in this administration is the machinery of government works to the benefit of Donald Trump before all else. That's the corrupt framework that produces insurrection slush funds, protects pedophiles, and dismisses the concerns of people who are worried about being able to make rent and to feed their families. There is an awful lot for the committee to discuss today, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to questions.
As this hearing comes to a close, it leaves behind far more than a political disagreement. It raises a much larger question. Who is government really working for? Throughout this exchange, we heard serious allegations about power, accountability, and whether the rules apply equally to everyone. The senator argued that the reported IRS settlement involving former President Donald Trump represents something unprecedented. According to his claims, it is not simply a legal dispute over taxes. It is a test of whether political influence can alter the way government institutions operate. Supporters of the administration would likely argue that legal settlements happen all the time and that accusations alone do not prove wrongdoing. Critics, however, see something very different. They see a system where powerful individuals appear to receive treatment that ordinary citizens could never expect. That perception alone has become a major political issue. Because regardless of where people stand politically, most Americans agree on one basic principle: the law should apply equally to everyone. The hearing also highlighted a broader concern about public trust in government, trust in federal agencies, trust in the institutions responsible for enforcing the rules. When that trust begins to erode, the consequences reach far beyond a single lawsuit or political controversy. People begin to question whether the system is fair. They begin to question whether accountability exists, and they begin to wonder whether influence matters more than justice. Those concerns become even more powerful during difficult economic times. The senator repeatedly connected this controversy to the everyday struggles facing American families: rising prices, economic uncertainty, household debt, concerns about jobs and financial stability. For many voters, those issues are far more important than political battles in Washington. Yet the argument presented here is that government priorities may be disconnected from the concerns of ordinary citizens. Whether voters agree with that argument or not, it reflects a growing frustration that can be heard across the political spectrum. People want answers, people want transparency, and perhaps most importantly, people want confidence that the institutions governing their lives are working fairly. Another major issue raised during the hearing involved the continuing controversy surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and the handling of related records. For years, questions surrounding those investigations have fueled public suspicion and intense political debate. Many Americans continue to ask whether all relevant information has been fully disclosed and whether every individual connected to the case has been properly investigated. Those questions remain politically explosive because they touch on one of the most important expectations citizens have of government: that justice should not depend on wealth, status, or influence. As this debate continues, the facts will ultimately matter more than the accusations. Investigations, documents, testimony, and evidence will determine what conclusions can be reached. But politically, the damage often begins long before final answers arrive, because once public confidence starts to weaken, rebuilding it becomes incredibly difficult. And perhaps that is the biggest story here. Not simply the allegations, not simply the politics, but the growing struggle over public trust itself. Trust in leaders, trust in institutions, trust in the idea that everyone plays by the same rules. As lawmakers continue investigating these issues, Americans on all sides will be watching closely for answers, because in the end, this debate is not only about one politician, one lawsuit, or one administration. It is about whether the public believes the system is working the way it was intended to work. And that question may ultimately prove more important than any headline generated by this hearing. Thank you for watching, and we'll continue following the story as new developments emerge.